Do you know who I am? I'm Adam, your Sergeant-at-Arms at BlampCo Incorporated, being made progressively weaker by things that haven't killed me since 2015, and this is How Adam Would Book, where I look back at infamous missed booking opportunities and say how I would do them better, 'cause I'm a smartass. This time around, I'm working on a commission from the one true ace in the Patreon pack, Felix, who many of the Patreon will know as the man who organises the monthly Adam and Terry Play Blood on the Clock Tower sessions with members of the Patreon on the Discord. If you want to join future games or want to request access to recordings of old sessions, seek him out on the Discord. To reward his loyal service to BlampCo, we granted Felix his very own cut and the chance to request a booking his choice, TNA's Aces and Eights storyline. Or to put it another way, yes, it's another episode in this long-running reality show. Guess which TV show / movie this wrestler just watched? From a series that brought you Scott Hall having just watched Scarface, to Bray Wyatt having just watched Cape Fear, to Sting having just watched The Crow, to Sting having just watched The Dark Knight, to Dean Ambrose having just watched The Dark Knight Rises, to Arachnaman having just watched Schindler's List, to the entire TNA locker room having just watched Sons of Anarchy, a show all about very tough boys nooming around California, combining extreme violence with rigidly enforced clubhouse hierarchies. And there's nothing cooler than someone saying, actually, you can't do that because I'm Captain Motorbike. You're only Vice Captain Motorbike. We all voted for you to be a Vice Captain Motorbike, so that wouldn't be fair to everyone else. And everyone else just goes brum, 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 brum. Haven't seen Sons of Anarchy. For the uninitiated, Total Non-Stop Action, or TNA, because they named the company in 2002 before we invented dignity, has been WWE's scrappy younger brother for about 25 fucking years. Even though they've had periods of putting on some absolutely sensational shows, especially when Samoa Joe, AJ Styles and the X Division were running wild, they were never quite able to break out of WWE's shadow. In 2010, they made a big play for relevance by bringing in Hulk Hogan and Eric Bischoff, the two men who created the NWO, the villainous faction who took over WWE's main competition WCW in the 90s, and a storyline that put WCW ahead of WWF in the ratings for 84 straight weeks. They tried to recreate the WCW magic by redoing Hogan versus Ric Flair, then by redoing turning Hogan heel with the Immortal storyline and taking over the company, and then in their most naked retread yet in 2012, they fully redid the NWO with the Aces and Eights. Almost all the good and almost all the bad. See, the NWO, or the New World Order to give them their government name, were a milestone in professional wrestling when wrestling finally departed from the goofball early 90s into the grungy, nihilistic late 90s. Wrestlers invaded their own company in an uncontrollable warlike frenzy, started wearing jeans, Hogan turned heel, and after the pastel-coloured kiddie bollocks of the early 90s, suddenly everything got very serious and very exciting for one glorious business exploding year, 1996 to 1997, and that was the wrestling boom. Even though the NWO was itself inspired by a Japanese invasion storyline of the Union of Wrestling Forces International invading New Japan, the NWO have been ripped off fucking loads by the Nexus to limited success, by Bullet Club to much better success, to the aforementioned Immortal, but chiefly in the Aces and Eights, a biker gang that invaded, took over, beat down the entire locker room, had everyone paranoid about who's working with them. Everyone started to join, loads of shocking reveals, a shocking leader who took the top championship hostage for a while, had a lone wolf who refused to take sides before battering everyone, for like the NWO itself, outstaying its welcome, becoming inundated with jobbers and slowly collapsing from audience disinterest rather than putting over a new young star in its wake. The Aces and Eights really is a wrestling story of two halves. One half of it is honestly pretty fucking good, and did for a time seem to be like Eric Bischoff recreating his greatest work, only with motorbikes because Eazy loves himself a little Revy Brum Brum. How did the storyline go? Well, in mid-2012, masked bikers attacked Sting and made themselves known to then TNA general manager Hulk Hogan with their calling cards, the dead man's hand of a two-pair, Aces and Eights, the hand that Wild Bill Hickok held when he was shot in the back by Jack McCall. I know this because, like TNA, I have also watched TV shows about cool dudes. In this case, Deadwood. cool dudes. The members were kept entirely secret for months. The run-and-gun guerrilla tactics of the locker room continued until Bound for Glory, where two things happened. The Aces and Eights won the right to gain full access to TNA, and the first member of the group was revealed to be Devon. Devon! Lead the stable! Over the next few months, more and more members were revealed. Doc Gallows, Mr. Anderson defected in order to have full sex with women, presumably while the rest of the club watched, and I'm honestly not joking. How do you interpret this footage? Mike Knox joined, history's most aggressive cube. Taz joined during a classic segment where he ruined the wedding of Bully Ray and Hulk Hogan's daughter. We don't have the time. Eric's son, Garrett, not me, joined alongside Wes Briscoe, and eventually Bully Ray stood by his father-in-law Hulk Hogan long enough to be granted a TNA title shot at Lockdown, where it was revealed that, oh no, it was Bully Ray all along. In a surprisingly really good series of vignettes called The Rise of Bully Ray, he outlined the last 9 months of TNA programming, how the plan worked, how it had to change at points, and even though the plan was pretty much motorbikes plus having sex with Hulk Hogan's daughter plus time equals profit, their explanation made a solid 80% sense, which is pretty comprehensive for TNA, honestly. It was a good bit of long-term storytelling and villainy hiding in plain sight. AJ Styles was given the role that Sting had in the original NWO storyline of going from clean-cut southern babyface to grungy lone wolf, and it looked like he was going to be the guy to save TNA from the Aces and Eights, and then it just sort of kept going for another about 8 more months. The group started to lose members. That's always a killer for a stable when you have to start protecting the fact that people are leaving by, oh, we kicked them out because they were bad. Like Vice President D'Lo Brown, Mr. Anderson was made Vice President, Chris Sabin came out of nowhere to dethrone Bully Ray for the TNA Championship for like a month before dropping it back immediately. A crazy short-term pop decision that actually mirrored what happened with Lex Luger and the NWO. Oh my god. No, seriously, it was a thorough fucking rip-off of them bringing in a famous sportsman to ally with the group. Dennis Rodman back in the NWO, UFC fighter Tito Ortiz in the Aces and Eights. It just went on for too long. Key players wandered out of the storyline. Devon left the company. Gallows left. Hulk Hogan left. The company pulled the parachute and reformed the Main Event Mafia to feud with them, but by this point it was just pretty much Bully Ray, Mr. Anderson, Wes Briscoe, and Garrett Bischoff. Those are your main guys. Oh, and Mike Knox. So therefore, the aura that could have been gained by beating this group, it was hugely diminished. Bully Ray gave the Angle everything he had, but by the time AJ Styles beat him for the title at Bound for Glory, and when Mr. Anderson put the final nail in the group's coffin, the faction was a shadow of its former self and wrapped up in the hell vortex that swirled around heel Dixie Carter for too much of the 2010s. The 18-month storyline ended with a genuinely brilliant funeral scene, but it was only genuinely brilliant because they were making fun of how shit the Angle had become. And the truth is, even though I don't watch a lot of TNA, I can do it better. Tricky. Roughly as tricky as it is to rock a rhyme that's right on time, and as anyone can tell you, that is tricky. But look, I can't pretend to be TNA's greatest fan or greatest historian. That would be Luke Owen. I'm not sure why anyone would pretend to be TNA's greatest fan. It's like pretending I have the world's lumpiest balls. Either you don't have to pretend, or you wouldn't. And I'm one of those. Guess which one. Anyway, I didn't watch the storyline play out in real time, but even just watching the amazing Lord of the Rings extended edition length recap video that TNA put on their YouTube channel, they've done quite a few of these complete history videos for storylines, by the way. They did the complete history of the Main Event Mafia, the complete history of Joker Sting, Immortal. It's incredibly useful for this specific purpose. Thanks, TNA. Just watching that recap, I think the storyline's fun bollocks. And then it and the video recap start being boring almost immediately after the Bully Ray reveal, but not necessarily down to factors that TNA could control, so I feel bad rebooking it. Everyone left. Out was intrigue, in was everyone's favorite wrestling staple, bickering. When it was good, you had masked bikers worshipping a cult leader and hitting people with hammers and a whodunit. When it was bad, you just had bikers being pissy at each other. You're kicked out. No, you are. Let's call a vote. fun television. But the stuff I liked. He had homegrown AJ Styles in his fun lone wolf persona be the guy to dethrone Bully Ray. Bully Ray was sure a WWE guy pushed to the top of TNA, but he never really had a sustained singles push in WWE, so that was different enough. And he was good at what he had to do. In rebooking this, I just want to say, don't reform the main event Mafia. Just disband the group after a big TNA versus Aces and Eights match. Have Lone Wolf AJ Styles beat Bully Ray, and do it all by, I don't know, Slammiversary. Have AJ spend the rest of the year touring the Indies. Have the TNA title match be the best match on the card at every event he plays, and have Bully Ray stick around to be a mind-broken general without an army monster heel. That just seems a little bit too empty and easy though. And honestly, with the mad way that TNA would film about 6 months worth of air quotes pay-per-views in advance and drip feed them over the next year as one night onlys, how the fuck are you supposed to book around that scheduling nightmare? So I'm just going to do an alternate Aces and Eights storyline, focus it a little bit more on TNA talent, and try to wrap it up before TNA runs out of money to do monthly pay-per-views or pay people. The first big question is, who's the leader? Do you keep it as Bully Ray? And I would say no. I get why the leader of an invading force makes sense to be an outsider, but for a company-wide story, masks, incremental reveals, the concept of the Aces and Eights, not only as an army, but a brotherhood, I think that story is much stronger when built around someone else. I think the leader should be James Storm, a pillar of TNA, and even though he'd held the TNA World Championship before, it was only for 8 days before losing it to Bobby Roode as Beer Money imploded. He was also a huge babyface at the time, which makes for an even more fun reveal. So let's make this story in chapters. Let's take it from June until Bound for Glory until Slammiversary, saddle up, let's ride, let's put on our cuts, their waistcoats. And, you know, they don't really make you look cool. They make you look like a lumberjack magician. But anyway, let's begin with Chapter 1. So this story revolves chiefly around 2 men, James Storm and AJ Styles. 2 men who are officially not having a good time in TNA in 2012. By mid-2012, Storm has had his first ever TNA World title reign ended in a week by his former tag partner Bobby Roode, and his long journey back to a rematch at Lockdown ended with him super kicking Roode off the cage, allowing him to retain, which made him look like the biggest pillock in the paddock. And he went away to drink, brood, and drink. AJ Styles, on the other hand, his 2012 was less good. He just had his best wrestler in the world brand tainted by Frankie Kazarian and Christopher Daniels, insinuating that Styles was having an affair with Dixie Carter, which would be the first step in a storyline that would lead to the infamously terrible Claire Lynch storyline. At Slammiversary 10, here's what I would have happen. Styles and Angle beat Bad Influence, and the storyline ends there. It simply has to end there. James Storm returns, beats Crimson, and the main event of the night, Bobby Roode versus Sting, ends with Roode winning thanks to a debuting gang of masked bikers who attack Sting with a hammer and leave a confused-looking Bobby Roode to cover the icon and retain his title that way. Slammiversary is where it all kicks off. It kicks off in the pay-per-view's main event, and from then on, we have the Bound for Glory series, a long-running round-robin tournament, let's be honest, a G1 Climax ripoff, to crown the #1 contender for the title at Bound for Glory. That series includes AJ Styles, Kurt Angle, Samoa Joe, and James Storm. Meanwhile, the Aces and Eights are running rampant, much like they did in real life. There's a lot of unidentifiable guys, but there appears to be 4 main members, differentiated because they're the ones wearing their leather waistcoats, and they're all giant fuckers. They attack Sting one more time on impact, leaving him bloody and laying, and then drop 5 cards onto his chest. A pair of black aces, a pair of black eights, and a face down card. As the weeks go on, no one in TNA is safe. Hogan has his leg broken, Kurt Angle is taken out, same with Samoa Joe, AJ Styles is attacked, James Storm is beaten down in one of his tournament matches, meaning he wins by DQ, and all signs initially point to Bobby Roode. After all, they debuted in his match at Slammiversary, they helped him retain the title, but he protests his innocence. No one cares though, because it's Bobby Roode. He's a shitbag. He's thrown out of the locker room. In fact, the locker room march him to the ring. The TNA roster surround the ring. He shouts at them, "I'm being framed," when the Aces and Eights attack en masse. A huge brawl ensues between the Aces and Eights and the company. The 4 leaders stand tall at the end, all masked up, but wearing their cuts. 2 of them have 8s painted on them. 2 of them have aces painted on them. And one of the aces wears a distinctive skull-shaped head mask. He takes up the TNA World Championship belt, hands it to Bobby Roode, and they leave Roode standing all alone amongst a battleground strewn with bodies. The attacks continue, and Roode is completely ostracized from the company. He's not the only one. Aces and Eights also start to help AJ Styles win his Bound for Glory series matches. In fact, he's undefeated because of them, and Bad Influence are delighted to go around stirring up trouble. He may not have been fucking Dixie Carter, they say, but looks like he's more than happy to fuck TNA. Also, we don't do the Claire Lynch thing. Just leave AJ Styles alone. He's given you 10 years. Sting and Hogan make their way to the Aces and Eights clubhouse, negotiate a match at Hardcore Justice, a no rules, total non-stop anarchy match. Because if you're gonna rip it off, let's not be goddamn fucking prudes about it. TNA versus Aces and Eights. And if TNA win, the bikers will ride off into the sunset. But if the Aces and Eights win, they're officially part of the roster, they can challenge for titles, and can come and go as they please. AJ Styles puts his name forward to fight for the company, to be on Team TNA, but Dixie Carter in the locker room don't trust him. They say no. AJ Styles walks away, but not before having one final program with Sting. Of all people, I thought you would understand what this feels like. To give a decade of your life to a company, only for them to turn around and say they don't trust you. Jeff Hardy fights against Bobby Roode for the title at Hardcore Justice, losing after yet more interference from Aces and Eights. And then the main event of that show, Samoa Joe, Kurt Angle, Sting, and James Storm versus both Aces and both Eights. And without rules, it is carnage. Towards the end of the match, Bobby Roode comes down. The Aces and Eights embrace him, offer him a hammer. He takes it. He looks at the two men standing in front of them. One is James Storm, representing TNA and his old enemy. The other is the skull-faced ace of the invading force. He is there to choose between these two men. He takes the hammer, nods, before using it to attack the Aces and Eights. Storm and Roode hit DWI to one of the Aces, but the rest of the gang swarm in. They beat them down before the Aces finally catch James Storm in a 3D through a table, pinning him to win. The man in the skull mask removes it to reveal Bully Ray. He takes the mic, he shouts, "Do you know who I am? Who I am is unimportant. But do you know who we are? We are the Aces and Eights, and TNA belongs to us." Over the weeks, the four main guys in the faction, the two Aces and the two Eights, are revealed. Bully Ray is the vice president, then Devon is the sergeant at arms, then director of chaos DOC, and enforcer Nux. Those are the four main giants in this faction. Bully Ray outlines the function of the group. They're a brotherhood. They're the last resort for the outcasts and the downtrodden in the wrestling industry. In an industry where friends turn on each other for a percentage, they are something deeper. And they're here to offer people in TNA a better way. Join the family and we'll protect you. Stand in our way and we'll run you down. They batter Bobby Roode one last time and smear the TNA World Championship in his blood. With Bobby Roode seemingly in the clear, all suspicion now lands on AJ Styles, who starts coming to work looking bedraggled, unkempt, no longer the poster boy of TNA. Now he's a lost soul, a lone wolf, a man whose outlook is as flat as the planet. Couldn't resist. The Bound for Glory series reaches its final at No Surrender, with Storm and Styles being the two finalists. The match, however, is attacked by the Aces and Eights, who surround Storm in the ring, but before they can attack, the locker room empties out. There's a huge schmoz to end the night, and the final shot of the pay-per-view is Styles looking at the Aces and Eights members. All this leads to a triple threat of Bound for Glory. James Storm versus Bobby Roode versus AJ Styles for the TNA World Championship, because triple threats have no DQs by definition. The locker room is warned to batten down the hatches. Bound for Glory, Bully Ray beats Samoa Joe for the television championship, but Devon, DOC, and Nux are beaten by Joe, Sting, and Angle after the return of Hulk Hogan. Finally, in the main event of Bound for Glory 2012, the gang makes their presence felt. They attack Bobby Roode en masse, drag him to the stage, smash him through a table. In the ring, James Storm and AJ Styles stand back to back. Bully Ray enters the ring, offers the hammer to AJ before then throwing it to James Storm, who catches it, cracks AJ in the head, pins him to win the TNA World Championship. After the match, James Storm is handed a black leather cowboy hat and a black leather vest with President written on the heart. As Bully Ray and Devon hold Styles up, James Storm takes the mic and says, in the dead man's hand, you have the aces, you have the eights, but then you have the fifth and final card, and that's the kicker. He nails AJ Styles with the last call as Bound for Glory draws to a close. James Storm's explanation of his actions is fairly simple. After years of trying to get to the top of the mountain the right way, it was all taken from him by his supposed brother, Bobby Roode. No one else had his back, so when he lost at Lockdown, he found himself at the bottom of a bottle. And that's where he found that the best friends a man can make, they're found at the bar. He starts riding with Bully Ray, Devon, DOC. He finds an actual brotherhood and decides that he was going to use them to take everything from Bobby Roode. First his friends in the locker room, then his pride, then his title. Storm says he tried doing it the hard way, so he thought he'd try doing it the easy way. For anyone who stood in his way as his plan came to fruition, sorry about your damn luck. But James Storm does have one thing to say to AJ Styles. He brings Styles down to the ring and Storm actually apologizes for everything. He had nothing against AJ. It was all just misdirection, but he wanted to offer AJ a place at his side. Sure, aces and eights turned the locker room against AJ, but it sure didn't take much doing, did it? 10 years, AJ. 10 years you gave this place and they turn your back on you like that? Why fight for a place like that when you can be part of a proper family? They offer him a cut. He takes it and says, let me think about it. He goes to leave. I'll be around. People start to defect to the aces and eights, if only to save themselves from the now weekly beatdowns. Mr. Anderson joins the crew, so does D'Lo Brown, so does Bad Influence. A lot of heels take the easy option. They decide that if they can't beat the aces and eights, they should join them. And the aces and eights swell and swell over the next few months as Storm and aces and eights are cementing their place at the top of the card by laying out all in their path. AJ Styles is seen riding around the country on a motorbike, looking off into the distance, trying to work out what matters most to him in this life. He's occasionally seen around the impact zone. He refuses interviews. He is taking some time away. Proper reference to Sting being seen in the rafters. Meanwhile, James Storm defends his title against Sting at Final Resolution, then against Samoa Joe and Kurt Angle at Genesis. No one leaves the group. There's no bickering, just dominance, numbers game, hammer attacks. James Storm keeps retaining, and they take out anyone who stands in their path. After the match at Genesis, as Storm is celebrating, Bobby Roode returns and attacks James Storm. And believe it or not, with the character that Bobby Roode is and the character that James Storm is, we're gonna have them feud where Roode's the face and Storm is the heel. And this is where it all starts to fall apart. All of the action is set to culminate in 2 matches at Lockdown. Hogan, Sting, and the TNA holdouts challenge Aces and Eights to a lethal Lockdown match, this one for all the marbles. If Team TNA wins, the Aces and Eights must disband, but, and a sort of doubling down of their previous match, if the Aces and Eights win, every member of Team TNA must join the Aces and Eights as the lowest possible level enforcers. Also, the sort of mid-pay-per-view main event match, Bobby Roode versus James Storm. 1 year on from their last cage match, they face each other for the title one more time with the alignments reversed. This match happens first and James Storm retains his championship by nefarious means, which leads into the main event, lethal Lockdown match, with Aces and Eights feeling supremely confident during that lethal Lockdown match. Aces and Eights have the advantage when AJ Styles comes down to the ring wearing a hoodie. He breaks into the cage, he accepts the waistcoat, he puts it on, he grabs a hammer, and then he lays waste to Bully Ray and the rest of Aces and Eights. He rips off the cut, he rips open his hoodie to reveal his Lone Wolf t-shirt. He leaves as Sting sets up Bully Ray with the Scorpion Death Drop, pins him. The Aces and Eights are done. Which takes us to Slammiversary, 1 year after the storyline officially started, main evented by James Storm versus AJ Styles. AJ Styles, the man who has taken everything from James Storm, who has now become the Midnight Rider, the Dark Cowboy. And while he may not have an army anymore, the loss of his group turned him into a dangerous and unstable man. However, on his own, he is not a match for the Phenomenal One, and AJ Styles pins James Storm to become the new TNA champion. So within a year, the Aces and Eights angle is done. There's still fallout to deal with. All the people who sold their souls to Aces and Eights only for the group to be dissolved so suddenly. They have a lot of questions to answer, and that can spin off into a number of feuds. James Storm has had a more significant run with the top belt than his first one, and he can use it to form a new heel persona. AJ Styles made his way to the Lone Wolf character without having to go through Claire Lynch to fucking do it, and the gang war ended while the group was at its height, rather than how this usually goes, with it just fading into irrelevance. That is how I would book the Aces and Eights. And hey look, it's my first ever TNA fantasy booking. Wasn't that interesting? I hope you enjoyed it and I didn't make too many timeline and continuity errors. Let me know what you thought, and thanks once again to Felix for his support for BlampCo. He's amazing. He's amazing. Find him on Discord. He's wonderful. Again, if you want to commission your own fantasy booking like this one, you can do so at patreon.com/BlampCo. Until next time, vroom vroom vroom. Get back to work.